Okay, we don't have enough time, so I'm going to go straight to the program. We are all here for one vision and one mission, and that is gender equality for women and girls. A lot of work has been put on in the last, I would have to say 20, 30 years. Beijing actually is a major pillar in where we stand when it comes to gender equality for women and girls. So first, to commemorate 30 years of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, the journey to women's rights. Let's begin by welcoming the director, the executive director of UN Women, Ms. Sima Bajos. She will be presenting the UN Women's Strategic Vision for Beijing+30. Sima, round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. I don't think within the halls of the United Nations this week there will be a more dynamic, a more cheerful, a more joyful, a more energetic group than this one. So welcome.
Bravo.
Also a group full of hope and resolve to help and do the best we can for women and children throughout the world. So most welcome. Excellencies, colleagues, fellow feminists, friends. Next year, we commemorate 30 years since the world convened to craft a historic agreement that had no less a vision than to build a world where every woman and girl would live free from discrimination, from violence, and from inequality. The Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action remains the most visionary roadmap for advancing gender equality, empowerment, and the rights of all women and girls everywhere. It has inspired so many to do so much. I pay tribute here to the women peace builders in Sudan, the Sahel, and everywhere, to the activists across the Americas who have championed the cause of a caring economy and a caring society, to the women in Gaza who are living the unimaginable daily, to the women in Gaza who are living the unimaginable daily in a war that must end, to the women fighting for their voices to be heard in Afghanistan, to the adolescent girls I pay tribute to the adolescent girls forging new pathways as innovators of digital technology, to the women and girl climate activists fighting for a planet on fire, to women's human rights defenders the world over. Heroes all, or as some would say, sheroes all. We see you, everyone, your work, your energy, and journey for justice, whilst long, is making a difference, and we thank you all. Today, we celebrate the progress we have seen since 1995. Lower overall poverty rates for women, finally. Great progress in education. Positive legal reforms that promote women's rights across numerous countries, changing lives for the better. However, let this progress not blind us to reality. The progress is too little too slow. While the tireless activists for equality have done their job, the rest of the world has not. And so we find ourselves racing against time. Our latest SDG snapshot report tells us that without acceleration, a girl born today will be 39 years old before women hold as many seats in parliament as men. She will be 68 before child marriage ends. And she will be 137 years old before extreme poverty for women and girls is eradicated. Last year, 612 million women and girls lived amidst the brutal realities of armed conflict, with a shocking 50% increase in conflict-related sexual violence perpetrated against them. Excellencies, colleagues, friends, we launch today a year of action to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. We contend that commemoration must be judged by acceleration and by positive change in the lives of women and girls everywhere. To achieve this, we will work with member states and other stakeholders to advance high-impact, high-return on investment priority actions at country level, harvested from the insights of your progress reports for Beijing+30 and what we know works and works fast. This is about focus. So we propose 6 priority drivers for gender equality and the SDGs more broadly. First, national action plans to end violence against women and girls. Second, securing women's leadership through temporary special measures. Third, unlocking finance to support the care economy and to reduce women's unpaid care work. Fourth, bridging the gender digital gap. Fifth, linking economic empowerment to climate action and transitions to green and blue economies. And sixth, ensuring accountability to the women, peace, security, and humanitarian action agendas. And across all, ensuring that girls and young women and young people are seen, uplifted, and heard. We will also work with civil society, in particular women's and youth organizations, to ensure they have the strategic pathways and resources they need, in the broadest sense, to claim rights and influence action. And we will work within the multilateral system to recommit to SDG 5 acceleration through the Beijing+30 review, including through the Secretary General's Gender Equality Acceleration Plan, so that it better delivers on gender equality and a unified position on women's rights, especially needed in the current context of pushback and regression. Together, we will ensure that the multilateral system is a force for real change in the lives of women and girls at the country, regional, and global levels. Excellencies, dear friends, dear feminists, everyone in this room, we convene today on the eve of the Summit of the Future, where the world is recommitting to reinvigorated multilateralism and recognizing women's rights' rightful place at the heart of it. That timing is opportune, and over the coming months, you will see our advocacy, our communications, our engagement with all partners to ensure that we collectively do justice to the legacy and the vision of the Beijing Platform for Action. Dear friends, we can and must make the choice to collectively leverage this moment. We can and must galvanize the political will, commitment, and resources needed to get back on track. We can and must fulfill the promise of the Beijing Platform for Action and the SDGs. A gender-equal world is within our reach if we choose it. We owe it to women and girls and to everyone, to our children and theirs, to delay no further and to build a future where women and girls everywhere thrive. Most welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much. Bravo for that message, Executive Director of UN Women, Ms. Sima Bahus. And now we will have our next speaker. Ayesha Najib is a climate justice activist Yes. And an intersectional feminist. Her work focuses on ensuring the leadership and meaningful participation of those at the front lines of the crisis. So I have to say, the youngest woman in the panel right now. Aishka, can you tell us what are the new and emerging challenges that are faced by young women and girls 30 years after the adoption of the Beijing Platform for Action?
Thank you so much. It is truly an honor to be a part of this panel. I am slightly fangirling because I'm sitting right next to the DSG and the ED. And I have such a beautiful view of all of the feminists from up here. And I must say that as I get to be one of the first speakers on the panel, I'm going to take the opportunity and the privilege and invite all of us today to have a very real and candid conversation. Because one thing my generation is not afraid of doing is to sit in discomfort and hold each other accountable and challenge current structures, reshape them based on decolonial, anti-imperialist, anti-racist, anti-classist, intergenerational, and feminist frameworks. And let's create a safe space of reflection. I also want to take this moment to really honor the long-fought struggles that have created this very intergenerational space I'm sitting in. And I really want to hold onto this collective power and dream for a liberated future. And when I was given this question, new and emerging issues, I was reflecting on this question and I was left with one thought. Are these really new issues, or were they historically excluded, lurking to become the next crisis? Are these actually new issues, or have we started listening to new people, from young people to those who are the most marginalized? And with that context, I would like to show you all this graphic that I prepared, which will be presented on the screen soon, hopefully. And as you will see on that, perfect. As you will see, it is intentionally in the form of a wheel, not a reinvented one, but a young feminist one. And it is prioritizing 6 critical areas, as you can see it, which we call the emerging mobilizers. And these emerging mobilizers are intended to address our current global political context, and young feminists demand that we see them on the Beijing Declaration. Now let's unpack. Firstly, feminist movements and people-led agenda. We are in an era of regression on feminist agendas, and we've seen that in this very halls during negotiations. I remember late nights we spent in CSW trying to get tech-facilitated gender-based violence on the text. It did not go well, spoiler alert. And we all know, we all talk about localization, but at the end of the day, who carry the legacies of these localization? Who carry the legacies of the decisions that is made in this very room? It is a young feminist. But why are they not strengthened? Why are they left to the brinks? Secondly, it's the decolonial and rights-based frameworks. We need to be honest that the structures that we're dealing with right now have been made by white men and have been made to serve the patriarchy. And the Beijing Platform for Action does not allude to these issues because it was released in an era of globalization, but now we're in an era of decolonization. Thirdly, reclaiming civic spaces and democracies. There is a total crackdown on spaces that we as civil society and young people depend upon. Moreover, the anti-rights movements are so well organized and infiltrating spaces, including spaces of power. They are far more resourced. It is extremely terrifying to be a young feminist today. On top of this, and I'm going to speak about it, is the shrinking civic spaces is the corporate capture of the United Nations. We need to recognize that corporate powers are threatening as equal stakeholders under the guise of multi-stakeholder approaches. We're seeing weakened accountability of private capital, and they are watering down laws and processes ensuring human rights and social justice, and we cannot let that happen in the Beijing Declaration. Then we have young feminist leadership. We've seen it in front of our eyes. Without including the largest youth population, the processes are set out to fail. Young people are here. Can I see a show of hands of young people in the room? And we've seen that.
Yes. And we've seen that in the Generation Equality Forum Accountability Report, where 83% of the programmatic commitments came from young people. So then why are we not funded? This is why... I don't mean to cut you, but...
Okay. I need to wrap
please,
up. Okay. This is why we need to have a redistributive justice, and lastly, a feminist climate justice. And if I can end, I know I pointed out challenges, but I really want to close off by saying that we cannot risk giving up, because to be hopeless is to be privileged, especially since it is us young feminists who put our bodies at the front lines every single time to bear the consequences. When will solidarity be a verb and an intentional act? With that, I would like to pose a question to this room. Who here is ready to commit to work with young people on the agendas that was mentioned on the wheel? Please raise your hands.
Me, and me.
Thank you.
And yes! All right. You know, that wasn't easy to do. It's not easy to cut Ayishka because you have such a powerful speech. We are running late and we have a lot of panelists. Please forgive me for that. Now I'd like to welcome, please give her a hand, Miss Amina Mohammed, the UN Deputy Secretary General and the most senior woman in the UN system. Madam, she has posed certain challenges today. They were quite clear. How do we turbocharge the UN's efforts to achieve gender equality? Not just talk, but action.
Okay, I mean, that's going to require me a long time, and you're going to tell me I've run out of time. But, you know, thank you so much, everyone, for being in the room. This is an incredible face of the diversity of the women and the feminist movement. For all you women in the room, and a few men, I saw them waving at us, it is fantastic to have this energy, and also, of course, the leadership of SEMA. You know, we're all young at heart, but you are absolutely right, Aisha. There are not enough of you in the UN. We have struggled with that, and I think we hope that we get better, but we certainly can't be an average age of 45 years coming into the Secretariat. That has to disappear. But thank you also to youth who have been in the House from the beginning. You started off the Summit of the Future. I know that we are doing Beijing+30 now, but the Summit of the Future started with young people. And the first time after 70-odd years that we've had an office that is dedicated to youth. And so, yes, you've broken, you know, not just the glass ceilings, but the concrete walls, and you've stepped in and you've created your space. And as I always say, once you get that space, occupy it, don't give it up, and just expand it. And I hope that you will be able to do that. But just shout out for young women yesterday on inclusivity. The Leave No One Behind for the SDGs was all about disability. And the two amazing women that came out, Daphne and Lorraine, really were just, you know, leaders that I standing on their shoulders today. Amazing, amazing people. We're, you know, a space here on the eve of the Summit of the Future. I think the geopolitical realities are not that they are new, but certainly they are undermining what we call in this space our global town hall for our global village. And that we have to push back against. We must protect this space. It is so important to get a pact out for the future, which includes future generations, but it includes much more than that. Reaffirmations on the SDGs, and that at the center is Goal 5, which is what we say the docking station for every other thing that happens on sustainable development. But the new era of technology, goodness me, if we're not getting ahead of that and not allowing it to use us or others to use us through that technology, then we're going to be in real trouble. We're counting on young women to help us to get ahead, to leapfrog it, not to be told, oh, well, there are going to be, all sorts of constraints and we're not going to have enough money for you. No, this is a time that we can leapfrog on this one. And then last but not least, we really do need the fight for resources, because those resources are in the hands of very few, 10 in fact. If we look at the math on what is where this all is, and we see systems where our representation does not represent the world that is here today. So the Beijing, Convention and the platform of action that was visionary and comprehensive still remains as valid as it was that day, because we haven't met the commitments. In fact, SEMA has listed a number of years that a child born today would have to wait before they attain very basic rights for which we are holding up decade in decade out. So let's not ignore both Aisha and Seema have said much of what is in this wonderful speech that's been written for me, but I will remind us that the regressions include today the atrocities that are being committed on women and girls, children in conflict. This should be one area that we say, this time in the world, this should not be acceptable. We should not be looking to mediate just for peace. We should be looking that in war, which quite frankly is sown in the seeds of men and not women, we should not be the ones that get to be the fodder. It is enough to see what is happening in Sudan, because there's no light on it, that millions and millions of women are affected. Men will come back from war and they'll be treated as heroes if they have been injured in any one way or the other, yet they created it. Women, rape. Women, the atrocities that they see when they are abused, but they lose their children. They come back and they're discarded. And this cannot be from Tigray to Sudan to Palestine. This is just not it. And so in conflicts, let's please remember that every single day there is a woman and there is a girl that doesn't see tomorrow, or that is, in fact, even just getting across the border is going to face a number more atrocities against them. But we look to sport as a unifying constituency where we all come together. And yet, when we have an athlete like Rebecca from Uganda who died after being set on fire by her partner, is that acceptable today? Yet, one place we are hailing women, and another place women are dying. And I think that this is incredible that we still continue to see also femicide as a pandemic that it is. So many examples of regressions, and we have to say no to that. However, good news, so many more examples of women in leadership. Everyone in here is a woman leader in one way or another, and we have to celebrate that from the grassroots all the way up to the global level. We had amazing SDG advocates in the room today. Look them up. There's 17, but of the 17, half of them are women, from young women to those with disabilities, and of course, those leading in many of the issues that you've picked up today. But we also had the Women Rise at the time of COVID. Many women did so much better in those leadership positions than we saw anywhere. The African Union and FemWise for politics and for elections. But also, look, leadership at the EU. The European Commission is a woman today. Also, we have a woman at the IMF. And this is really important because these are institutions where changes can be made, and made this year, next year, and the year after. So I hope that in the Summit of the Future, and that tomorrow we have a pact that we can gavel in spite of the pushback from some countries that get stuck in the words and less in the actions that they have the responsibility to take, and that we will go into the high-level week. And in the high-level week, whether it is AMR and the health agenda, or that we're talking to the G20 about governance, or that we are addressing many of the political issues, that women's voices are heard. Unfortunately, we're going to see a panel, or not a panel, a family photo of heads of state. We're going to take track of that, and we're going to see very few women. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't see women in the delegations. We will get to getting the women into leadership eventually. It's a long track. But it doesn't mean because of that we don't see them in the delegation. So I would urge everyone that has any connection to a member state to say, should there not be a resolution to say that delegations to the UN should also be gender parity, and that we get that done properly. That's one action, and I'll probably be in trouble as I walk out this room. But anyway, this is what this room does. You create an energy, you create a sense of purpose, You give people the courage of their convictions, and that's what we need, because there is so much fear-mongering today. We'll be told that many young people are afraid of the future and they don't know what, but when I listen to Aisha, nobody afraid of the future here. She's getting ready to go. So ours is to get behind you here at the country level. Oops, yeah, the Chinese are on the screen, yes? Okay, is it my screen? Okay, all right. So I think I've just been asked to end my statement, and I will do so happily, because actually one of our very populous nations is coming up to speak to us. But look, all I can say is a luta continua. Just let's keep the fight going, occupy the spaces, be loud about it, and the struggle continues. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bravo. Thank you so much, Ms. Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the UN. And I have to say, she has to leave at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to attend the Summit of the Future. She takes with her the spirit and energy of the room. One more, please give her a hand. I'd now like to introduce a video message from Her Excellency Huang Xiaowei, Minister and Deputy Head of the National Working Committee on Children and Women of the State Council of the People's Republic of China.
尊敬的联合国妇女署执行主任巴胡斯女士，尊敬的各位同事、女士们、先生们，大家好。在北京世妇会30周年、全球妇女峰会10周年即将到来之际，很高兴与联合国妇女署、墨西哥、丹麦、肯尼亚、法国共同举办这次会议，正式启动联合国纪念北京世妇会30周年进程。男女并驾，如日方东。在北京世妇会精神引领下，30年来，各国推动男女平等的步伐越来越坚实，妇女社会地位显著提高，半边天作用日益彰显。每一位妇女都是时代的书写人，追梦的奋斗者。性别平等和妇女赋权作为联合国2030年可持续发展议程重要目标取得积极进展，但也要看到世界格局加速演变，发展鸿沟更为突出，妇女发展成果面临流失的风险。今天，全球每10位妇女中仍有1人生活在极端贫困中，近6亿妇女生活在受冲突所影响的环境中。以平等、包容、可持续方式落实北京宣言和行动纲领依然任重道远。我们纪念北京+30，不仅要总结历史性成就，更要为妇女赋权和发展加速行动，优先解决好妇女贫困、就业、教育、健康等发展问题，在缩小数字性别鸿沟、应对气候变化等新挑战上有所作为，在高质量发展中推动妇女走在时代前列。女士们、先生们，中国始终是男女平等和妇女发展事业的积极倡导者和坚定行动派。习近平主席提出高质量共建“一带一路”以及全球发展倡议、全球安全倡议、全球文明倡议等系列重大倡议，都将男女平等和妇女全面发展作为重要议题。习近平主席夫人彭丽媛教授担任联合国教科文组织促进女童和妇女教育特使、中国春蕾计划促进女童教育特使，为推动全球女性教育事业发展做出了杰出贡献。中国建立了包括100多部法律法规在内的保障妇女权益的法律体系，连续制定实施4个周期的妇女发展纲要。国家层面和31个省区市都建立了法规政策性别平等评估机制。今年7月召开的中国共产党20届3中全会，将健全保障妇女儿童合法权益制度 纳入进一步全面深化改革，推进中国式现代化大局，在此彰显了中国坚定促进男女平等和妇女全面发展的国家意志。新时代，中国妇女事业成就斐然，我们打赢人类历史上最大规模的脱贫攻坚战，6亿9千多万妇女同步迈进小康，提前10年实现联合国2030可持续发展议程的减贫目标。我们在妇女教育、医疗等领域加大投入，女性平均受教育年限提升至9.59年，人均预期寿命达到80.88岁。我们为困难妇女提供更有力支持，包括重度残疾的等900万困难妇女享受特殊补贴，420万困难女童在春蕾计划资助下求学圆梦。这个项目获联合国教科文组织女童和妇女教育奖。我们最大限度激发妇女创造活力，女性劳动参与率为63.7%。互联网领域女性创业者占55%，女科技工作者占比达到45.8%，女高级法官占比达到43.7%，居民委员会女性成员占比达到54.3%。巴黎奥运会中国代表团40枚金牌当中，女性运动员参与夺得23枚。中国女性在各行各业书写着不平凡的成就，成为推动中国式现代化不可或缺的重要力量。一枝独放不是春，百花齐放春满园。习近平主席在2015年全球妇女峰会上提出的一系列全球合作倡议已经得到全面落实。中国为180多个国家和地区培养了20多万名女性人才，向48个非洲国家派遣医疗队，母亲水窖、母亲健康快车等小而美公益项目走向更多国家。今年4月，成立了全球妇女发展合作交流培训基地。9月上旬，又成功举办了中非合作论坛妇女教育主题会议，上海合作组织妇女论坛，为赋能妇女和深化交流合作提供了新平台。女士们、先生们，实现现代化是各国的共同追求，没有妇女的现代化，就没有世界的现代化。我们愿与各方一道，以纪念北京+30为新起点，在现代化征程上携手推进男女平等和女性赋权，不断消除针对女性的偏见、歧视、暴力，努力为妇女全面发展搭建平台，扫清障碍，创造条件，携手推进妇女共建共享美好世界，在发展中保障妇女权益，靠发展改善妇女民生，全面提升妇女在经济社会发展中的主体地位、参与水平、变革力量，携手推进全球妇女事业合作，坚定和平发展和合作共赢理念，深化文明交流互鉴，朝着更加公平、包容、高质量的方向前进，为推动构建人类命运共同体做出更大贡献。谢谢。尊敬的联合国
Thank you very
秘书
much,
执行主任
Madam
巴布
Shao
什
Wei.
女士。
Thank you very much, Madame Shao Wei. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Deputy Permanent Representative from China, who's in the room with us today. Can you please stand up, sir? Thank you for being here. What an honor. So just very quickly, who was in Beijing 1995? Okay. So we're seeing the age of the people in the room. Who is going to be here 2025 as we commemorate the 30th anniversary? Bravo. I'd now like to call on the host of the first World Conference on Women and a Champion for Gender Equality, Ms. Nadine Gazman, the president of the National Institute for Women of Mexico. And the question is all about accountability, accountability, accountability.
Muy buenas tardes a todas. Estoy
Good afternoon, everyone. I am very, very excited to be participating on behalf of the government of Mexico in this event about Beijing. This event, Beijing+30, towards a world with gender equality. In the framework of this Summit of the Future, I want to say hello to my colleagues and panelists and begin with a reflection about the platform of action in Beijing, which is a very important point in the feminist struggle to fight discrimination and inequality and consolidating the historical demands of women's movement. After 3 decades, we've achieved an advancement in the life of all women in different social structures and also in the institutional structure of the countries, but there is too much to be done yet, as we've said. But I want to say that in Mexico, girls that are born today are born into Mexico with equality in cabinets and Congress, and we are about to have our first women president. So with political will and with work, we do not have to wait 130 years, please. Thank you. I also want to share some of the important outcomes. First is that for the Mexican government, the main or principal pillars of our national development is to not leave anyone behind and outside of the advancement. And first are the poor people. And by implementing this social approach in public policies, we are able to achieve 3.5 million women left the moderate poverty, 700,000 from extreme poverty, and 1 million didn't started to have income. We implemented our constitution, the mandatory statement where we need to include parity at all levels, federal, state, municipal, in the executive power, and in autonomous bodies, and mayors and city government. We have promoted the women participation at all levels, and as I said, this is the first, Claudia Sheinbaum is the first women president in 200 years, and also the first women president in North America. We have advanced in sexual and reproductive health rights. 13 of 22 entities have a legislation where pregnancy can be interrupted and abortion has been decriminalized. We have achieved the reduction of adolescent pregnancy, and there has been prohibition for young people. We introduced sexual education and reproductive education integrated into the preschooling plans and the prevention and detection of violence cases for women and adolescents. We strengthen the gender perspective as a state policy where the rights of women is prioritized in all 3 powers of the government. And this is consistent with the first president of Mexico, the Secretariat of State will be elevated. We were able to provide an integral, comprehensive focus in services for women against women violence. And we have an expectation very high in the future compact because we do not have arrived at the end of this journey. We need a future compact with gender approach and intersectional. There is no other way to guarantee a healthy world in peace and security. One statement to end. Next year, we commemorate the 50 years of the first World Conference on Women and the 30th anniversary of the Declaration and Platform of Beijing and the conference in Mexico. We all welcome and wait for you. Thank you very much.
President for the National Institute of Women of Mexico. We don't have music like the Academy Awards, that when we cut people, they're going to start playing the music. So you have to forgive me. All right. Next, the role of women and girls organizations in securing gender equality. Let's welcome Sasha Gabizon from the Women's Major Group.
Thank you so much, Chair, and esteemed panelists. It's such a pleasure to be on this exciting panel. I'm with Women Engaged for a Common Future. We're a member of the Women's Major Group. And I speak on behalf of the Women's Major Group. For those of you who don't know, we are organizing the thousands of women and feminist organizations who follow the negotiations at the UN here in New York continuously. And I hope some of you are in the room. Any women's major? Yeah, all right, great, super. Excellent. So, of course, the role of women and feminist organizations has always been key, pushing our member states to put gender equality, equal rights, non-discrimination, non-violence front and center, and to hold them accountable for these commitments. And a lot has changed when I went to Beijing in 1995 to the 4th World Women's Conference. We were 30,000 civil society women in Huairu. So we were a little bit outside of Beijing, but it was a super inspiring, strategizing meeting. And we were, putting out statements and doing demonstrations for feminist peace, for demilitarization, for sexual rights, and against patriarchy. And we were a new generation of very diverse global feminists from all places, and we had hope. And that's why I'm so worried when I hear my colleague Agnieszka, and that today's feminists no longer have that hope. They even have to fear to speak up as feminists. I mean, I see it with my own colleagues in our office in the Caucasus in Tbilisi. Things have really turned bad very quickly. The government just passed new legislation to stop the work of civil society, the so-called Russian foreign agent law. This is happening in many countries. They also just passed a law to track back on the existing rights for LGBTQI+ people. And the day after, a very famous transgender model got murdered in her home. That is the result of these types of policy backtracking. Her name was Kesaria Ambramitze. It's horrendous, it's terrible. And that is the real danger of what we see today. Anti-rights groups, backed by authoritarian regimes and religious fractions, are collaborating to undermine our rights, often with intransparent sources of funding, trying to divide us, trying to instill fear and hate with lies. And of course, it's a response to the progress we have made in the last years. Without the civil society, women, girls, and feminist organizations, we would not have had the progress we have seen since 1995. Legislation to end forced marriage, FGM, fight sexual and gender-based violence, give women land tenure rights, safe and legal abortion, same-sex marriage, so much progress we have made. Women organizations are, of course, also hyper important in providing services, shelters, etc. So yes, yes, yes. It's thanks to feminists who have continuously taken to the streets, risking their lives and freedom, that we have seen so much progress. So I want to make it clear that for us as Women's Major Group, a feminist is a person that stands, of any gender, that stands for equal rights for all. And that we take action based on understanding structural and historic barriers, and that therefore we need an intersectional, decolonial, feminist agenda of the future. So let me give you a few points, a few points of what should be in that, looking at Beijing+30 and looking at Beijing+35. We want funding for feminist mobilization, collaboration, and organizing. We want governments and institutions to protect our civic spaces where we can openly resist anti-rights groups and advocate for gender equality. We want governments to close the loopholes that fund these anti-rights groups, and we want them to source, resource, and finance feminist transformative agendas. And I will soon end, but we also need parity of women in all decision-making at multilateral level, including in the economic and financial institutions. We need more of that. It's great that we already have it in some spaces. And therefore, I think the decisions taken here, also the Summit of the Future, to do more work on the, coordination for taxation, to introduce a billionaire's tax, hopefully, are all very, very important things. So, yes, we need you to, to stand up, take radical actions that advance women's rights in all their diversity, have robust accountability mechanisms to ensure that commitments lead to transformative change. We will be ready to occupy these spaces. We will be ready to be loud, and we'll be ready to work with you for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sasha. Thank you. Now, you talked about policy backtracking, funding, more discussions on that later on. I'm honored to give the floor to France's Ambassador for Human Rights, Ms. Isabelle Rome. Madam.
Madame la directrice exécutive.
Mrs. The Director of UN Women, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank UN Women for organizing this event, as well as China, Denmark, Kenya, and Mexico for their commitment. The year 2025 marks the 30th anniversary of the adoption of two major documents to advance the rights of women and girls worldwide. The Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. This solid and innovative frame of reference made equality between men and women an essential condition for sustainable development, peace, and democracy. Adopted by 189 countries, it marked a founding turning point. The international community has come together to recognize the universal nature of women's and girls' rights. This was the message conveyed at the Generation Equality Forum in 2021 with Mexico and UN Women to celebrate the 26th anniversary of the Beijing Conference. The next generation must be one of equality. We have taken numerous initiatives to help advance the situation of women and girls worldwide. First, by increasing the proportion of development aid developed to combating inequality, with the aim of reaching 75% of projects incorporating a gender dimension. By supporting feminist civil society. Thanks to a dedicated fund of 250 million euros to support feminine organizations, France is one of the world's leading funders of feminist organizations. Finally, by implementing the Security Council's Women, Peace and Security agenda, dedicated national allocation plans, and our support for the Global Fund for survivors of conflict-related sexual violence. Over the past few months, France has drafted its national report on the implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action. It bears witness to our support for the multilateral system as our guarantor of the accountability of states' commitments. Ladies and gentlemen, significant inequalities persist between men and women. Some 736 million women and girls are victims of violence at least once in their lives. They are vulnerable to extreme poverty and climate change. Women remain underrepresented in decision-making processes and in public economic, social, and political life. First and foremost, there will be no equality as long as there is violence against women. We need to put an end to the impunity of perpetrators, criminalize and punish the guilty, but also better protect victims and compensate for their harm and suffering, as well as prevent violence and educate. Educate this to fight against stereotypes that generate violence and future inequalities. This must be done within each of our countries as well as internationally. That's why one of the pillars of our feminist diplomacy is combating all forms of violence against women and girls. France, together with the Netherlands, will be submitting a resolution to the United Nations General Assembly, a resolution on the elimination of violence against women and girls in the digital environment. Another major theme is the promotion and defense of sexual and reproductive health rights. France was the first country to enshrine the right to abortion, voluntary interruption of pregnancy, in its constitution on March 8, 2024. France supports UN Women and UNFPA projects aimed at empowering women's bodily autonomy. For this, it is necessary to promote a feminist agenda in multilateral firms with the promotion of more protective standards. The full participation of women in the decision-making process is also a decisive step towards equality. This is why France supports the CEDAW Committee's Draft General Recommendation number 40. The next generation must be one of equality. To achieve this goal, we cannot act alone. It is essential to pursue. So France fully supports the launch of Beijing+30 frontiers. This initiative will enable us to combine our efforts to collectively achieve Goal 5 of the 2030 Agenda. I look forward to, so this is very important for objective number 5 of Agenda 2030. So I will see you at the next conference of feminist policy that France will host in Paris in 2025. Thank you. Merci.
Now let's go to Kenya's Principal Secretary for Gender and Affirmative Action, Ms. Ang Wangombe. Madam Secretary, we welcome you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. We were supposed to look at accelerate meaningful and effective leadership and participation of women and girls at decision-making levels. Excellencies, honorable delegates, ladies and gentlemen, all the young people participating in this event, good afternoon. Let me, from the onset, start by expressing Kenya's appreciation for allowing us to co-sponsor this event. I also wish to convey our sincere greetings from Kenya. Much gratitude goes to the UN Women for honoring our beloved country, Kenya, with this invitation and according us this great opportunity to speak at this momentous high-level event. Honorable delegates, Kenya has always accorded high priority to matters of gender equality and empowerment of women and girls. Since the landmark 1985 World Conference on the Nairobi Forward-Looking Strategies that reviewed and appraised on the achievements of the UN Decade for Women and the 1995 Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, the country has made significant progress in and around the 12 critical areas of concern. Honorable delegates, on leadership at national and local government, Kenya's constitution explicitly recognizes women's rights and emphasizes gender equality. The not more than two-thirds gender principle prescribes an inclusive and diverse governance structure in all spheres of leadership. To actualize this principle, the government, through a multi-stakeholders approach, has made legislative proposals, policy interventions, and administrative actions. At both levels of government, the multi-sectoral intergovernmental framework on gender brings together women leaders to strengthen their inclusion and participation in all spheres of leadership. Notable progress towards realization of gender parity has been made. Actually, the proportion of women leaders has increased considerably in the judiciary, parliament, the executive. However, much more still needs to be done. Honorable delegates, on peace and security, Kenya has emphasized the importance of women participation in peace building and security in line with the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325. The second National Action Plan is localized and being implemented in counties, taking into consideration county-specific contexts. Some strides made include the gender policy environment has improved management mechanisms, enhanced recruitment campaigns, and integrated gender perspectives into national security trainings that have realized increased women representation in the top military, police, and other security agencies. Capacity development programs have amplified women's voices in public spheres and realized increased proportions of women in Kenya peace committees. We have also conflict assessments and early warning systems which have been incorporated, recognizing the differentiated impacts of conflicts on women and men. We also have well-established women peace building and mediators networks and committees which have opened up spaces for women's participation in local conflict mediation and significant policy, operational, and procedural reforms. Our pastoral women leaders networks have promoted peace dialogues and challenged cultural norms that exclude women from emergency preparedness, early warnings, and crisis response through community radios. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have Kenya's just transition from heavy dependence on carbon-intensive sectors to environment sustainability which is driven by fair transformations to a green economy and creation of green jobs for those impacted by the transition and climate change. With these interventions and many other efforts that have not been able to mention, our economy has continued to grow, but we appreciate that much more needs to be done and we are still on course. Once more, we appreciate your support and the opportunity to share our lived experiences in the matters of discussion this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. And thank you, Kenya, for co-hosting this event. It's difficult to speak within 3 minutes, but let's all try. So money makes the world go round, and there will be no acceleration for women and girls, frankly, without money. So let's talk about money. Allow me to invite the representative of Denmark to deliver her remarks. Birgitta Markusen, Director for Humanitarian Action and Civil Society Department. Madam, 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam. I feel very humbled to be here today. Thanks a lot for this opportunity. Talking about financing hardcore issues. I don't think it's necessary to explain in this room why financing of gender equality is very important, and it's critical, particularly in light of the global backlash that we have seen in terms of what is happening against women and girls' rights. Also in light of the limited progress that we unfortunately have seen on key gender equality indicators such as girls' education, access to nutrition, and child marriages, just to mention a few. To begin closer to home, in an OECD context, actually only 4% of total bilateral ODA activity has gender equality as the main objective. We must be able to do better than that. According to UN Women, the global figures are daunting, with a funding gap of $360 billion annually. This figure is insignificant compared to the returns we get from investing in women. For example, according to UN Women, closing the gender gap in labor force participation and management positions in OECD countries could generate approximately $7 billion trillion US dollars in global economic activity. Addressing these gaps in major emerging economies would increase the gain even further. Allow me just to touch upon 5 key elements in terms of what could be done and needs to be done in financing. First, More resources are needed from governments, the private sector, and multilateral institutions. Second, we need to secure the overarching targets to financing development, including the ODA target of 0.7%. But, thank you. But more than that, we must prioritize to increase funding for gender equality. 3, at the national level, domestic budgets must be increased. 2, and tax systems must contribute to increasing resources for gender equality and be designed to be just, progressive, and redistributive. 4th, financing for gender equality is critical across sectors and regardless of context. 5th, last point, as an example of a private sector initiative, it's worth highlighting the Danish support to the Investment Fund for Developing Countries. The public sector cannot do this alone, and engaging financial institutions is absolutely key. In conclusion, it is therefore our hope that the outcomes of the Beijing+30 and the upcoming 4th International Conference on Financing for Development will lead to strong international commitments that place financing for gender equality at their core. Denmark remains ready to work alongside all our partners and like-minded to protect the rights of women and girls, as well as other marginalized groups. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Marcusen. Very clear points made there. Now, along with funding, the philanthropy sector plays a big role in accelerating gender equality for women and girls. I'd like to give the floor to Monica Ailman of the Ford Foundation.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, we are confronted with multiple crises in the world. Crises that hit women and gender non-conforming individuals particularly hard, and we are being called to step up. As a philanthropic organization, this moment represents a unique opportunity. For us at the Ford Foundation, this has translated into 3 central pillars of work. First, we insist in investing in ensuring there is a robust set of international standards and norms that are anchored on the freedom from fear and the responsibility to protect and care for each other. Our investments are channeling resources to sustain the feminist infrastructure around the world, because we know that women's rights organizations and feminist funds are at the heart of the world's solutions. Second, we are determined to transform the material well-being of the many communities around the world where we have a presence, by investing directly in local solutions through the work of civil society organizations, local and territorial governments. In fact, we have made it a point for our investments to be driven by a spirit of collaboration, in which we understand that multi-stakeholder partnerships are the essence of the new era in development practice. And third, we recognize that the resources going to advance the rights of women, girls, and gender non-conforming individuals are on the decline. We are therefore doubling down our commitment to organization to call attention to this. In fact, I am here today to report that we have fully allocated the $400 million that we committed in the Generation Equality Forum. We have distributed these resources to 300 civil society organizations working on gender justice. In addition, we recognize that we are facing a backlash, and for that reason, we increased our budget by $50 million this year to, again, invest directly in civil society organizations that are on the front line. We know this is not a time to step back. We have the opportunity to double down and consolidate the gains. My call today is for all of you who have the opportunity to contribute to resources to work with us and those ones on the front lines. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Monica. Thank you to the Ford Foundation for all that you do. And as we've heard today, it's where you put your money is how you walk the talk. It's not just about talking about it in this room, but where you allocate the funds. Now, if you thought 3 minutes is hard, this is 1 minute as a reaction for our participants on the floor. But we need to get your opinion. We're focusing on these words: accountability, recommitment, resourcing for the Beijing platform to achieve the vision. So what do you see as your role in the Beijing+30 process? Allow me to first call on His Excellency Igli Hassani, Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs, Albania. 1 minute, sir.
To host more than 140 Afghan women, together with Spain and Switzerland, in Tirana. Gender apartheid is happening, and is happening every day there. And if we put the focus on whatever space of time, let's talk about the last 12 months. I've seen the horrible effects of war, of aggression against Ukraine and its effects on Ukrainian women. I've seen the brutal atrocities on Israeli women on the 6th of October. I've seen the terrible suffering of women in Gaza. They are living in terrible conditions. I've seen millions of women being displaced in Sudan. Gender apartheid, as I said, in Afghanistan, and the decade-long discrimination of women in Iran. Therefore, my minute is over. We have to do more for all of these women, because that's our duty.
Thank you very much, sir. And thank you for what you mentioned about just recently what Albania's done in hosting these women. Now, let's hear from Ambassador Vanessa Faria, the High Representative for Gender Issues at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Brazil.
Good afternoon, everyone. As we embark on the Beijing+30 process, I first want to reaffirm the Brazilian commitment to translate the Beijing Platform for Action into national policies. This highlights the importance of social justice and the necessity of public social policies such as Bolsa Família, Family Grant Program, and the Food Acquisition Program, initiatives that demonstrate that state investment focused on women produces significant results. These proven and effective policy models will be available for replication and adaptation by other countries as part of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, which is the primary initiative of the Brazilian presidency at the G20. The Beijing plan's focus on intersectionality is extremely relevant to my country. Brazil has voluntarily adopted a new SDG 18, which aims to eliminate all forms of ethnic racial violence. In the Beijing+30 agenda, we should continue to work together to recognize intersectionality as an essential element in the protection of women's rights. In doing so, we must highlight that climate change is not gender neutral. At COP30 in Brazil next year, we want that the needs of women and girls who bear a disproportionate burden of the world's impacts to be heard and taken into account. By addressing multiple inequalities, Brazil aims to contribute to a more inclusive and fair society through amplifying the voices of all women and girls, especially those often unheard due to their race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, age, economic class, migration status, or disability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And bravo to Brazil for the 18th Sustainable Development Goal. Thank you for that. Now I'd like to call Her Excellency Ambassador Rebecca Amuge of Uganda.
Thank you. Allow me to stand on the existing protocol respectfully. I'm here to represent Her Excellency, the Prime Minister of Uganda, and that is Robina Nabanja. In Uganda, we take this as a very important platform. One, the Beijing Platform for Action is a twin with the Ugandan Constitution 1995. And then this time, coming after the Summit of the Future is Beijing+30. 2030 Beijing Plus. And also Uganda is the chair of G77 plus China, who hosted Beijing Platform of Action in 1995. What do we do as a country? We made sure that in the constitution of Uganda, we enshrine the equality of gender in our constitution. The empowerment of women and girls is the foundation principle in the constitution of Uganda. We've made sure that the rights of the women and girls are very strong in our constitution. We've introduced the gender budgeting, that if you don't have the gender certificate in Uganda, your budget is never funded by the Parliament of Uganda. We've also made sure that a third of all the leadership in the country, especially political, is given to the women as affirmative action. We've also made affirmative action for the girls to be admitted at the different public universities. Uganda takes it very serious that the gender-based violence is one thing that we must take care of, and Uganda has got a special court, and these sessions are for the gender-based violence where it's supposed to be in secret so that they don't fear going to the courts. We've done that, and we've reduced the backlogs. Your Excellency, as we speak about this, we should remind you that Uganda is a member of the Peace and Security Council of African Union. As we speak today, over 468 children in the world, and most in Africa, and 600 women in the world, and mostly in Africa, are living in the conflict zones. The women in Sudan, Burkina Faso, Mozambique, DRC, Central African Republic, where we visit, are living in a very difficult situation. We therefore must remember them and the humanitarian workers that make sure that life is better in this kind of situation, that the perpetrators are not the women, but they are the victims, and they take care of the children. We therefore would like to say that we are committed as a country to make sure that we walk the talk, like you've said, and we make sure that the equality and parity of our women is in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bravo on gender-based budgeting. Let's now hear from Dr. Zoniziwo Mondie, Executive Director of Women for a Change, Cameroon.
Very much. W Africa. As we look forward to Beijing 30 and the Park of the Future, it's imperative to acknowledge the intersectionality of women's lived realities, recognizing the multiple evolving layers that shape our identities and journeys. Our rights are absolute, non-negotiable, and cannot be battered in the confines of boardrooms marked by patriarchal interpretations of culture and religion. Africans' women's rights are human rights, and we refuse to accept anything less. We reject any attempt to use culture as a shield to deny us our dignity. Culture is not in conflict with humanity, love, compassion, or basic dignity. We are not here to ask for the impossible. We are here to demand what is rightfully ours, to be treated as human beings with full unapologetic access to our rights. Our existence is not up for debate, and we will not be silent. We demand justice. And want to also take the opportunity to also thank all the partners who support us, including FORT, and for making sure that the work of women's rights stays strong and alive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Before I call on our next speaker, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Prime Minister of Aruba. Can you please stand up, sir? Oh, ma'am. Ma'am, of course. Ma'am. And also the Ambassador at Large for Women's Issues of the United States. Let's hear from a youth activist, Renata Alvarenga.
Historical, unprecedented, once in a generation. That's what we're living through. It feels like we're living through exceptional times all the time. And honestly, as the young people, we're exhausted. We have seen and we're expected to experience more unmatched climate-fueled disasters in our lifetime than most of the previous generations. We have made progress on the gender gap for education, but around 120 million girls are still out of school. Decision makers are always saying how we're the last generation that can do something about the climate crisis. And experts tell us that we have 286 years until we achieve gender equality. So I ask you, in a world where women represent 80% of those that are displaced by climate change, can we actually solve the climate crisis, save the planet without smashing the patriarchy? There's no climate justice without gender justice, without racial justice. There's no sustainable development without human rights and peace. Whether it be the 10 years of the 2030 Agenda of the Paris Agreement or the Beijing Platform for Action, next year's brings incredible momentum for interconnectedness. So as we reach these anniversaries, let's reflect why we're still working in silos. So for this vision, for Beijing+30, for this just, secure, safe world that we want to achieve, let us lead with compassion and let us hone in to the power of young feminist action and intergenerational solidarity. Thank you. Obrigada.
Thank you so much. I'll see you next year. And now I'd like to call on Ambassador Bob Ray, Permanent Representative of Canada to the United Nations.
Congratulations for such a successful conference today. I'm very proud to be representing a feminist Prime Minister. I'm very proud to be a feminist as well. I'm very proud to be the president of ECOSOC this year, where gender equality is going to be one of our continuing and powerful themes. I've been at the UN now for 4 years, and I can tell you patriarchy is a real thing. And I can tell you that misogyny is a real thing. And the fight against patriarchy and misogyny must continue. It's difficult. It's tough. We do face the pressure of a rollback. We should be under no illusions about that. But I can also assure you that we will win. And I want to tell the last speaker, it will not take 286 years.
Thank you very much, sir. Wow, you ended with a punchline. I didn't see that coming. That was it. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And to close, our last speaker today is His Excellency Abdulaziz Al Wasil, Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to the United Nations.
First of all, I would like to let you know that I am very proud and honored to be with you today for many reasons. Number one, I am a true believer of equality and justice for all women and girls. Second, I am a father of 3 girls. Three, proud to be also representing my country, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Fourth, also I am the chair of the CSW 69 session. Therefore, there are many things to say about this subject, and I would like to pick up only a few points. Number one, I think we need to be mindful of effective and laws and policy to promote and ensure equality and justice for all women and girls. Second, as a chair of the CSW, I would like to invite everyone, member states, civil societies, activists, to be very engaging in this matter with all member states, and I promise you that we will do our best to reach an outcome that will eventually have an impact on the rights of women and girls all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. His Excellency Abdulaziz Al Wasil, Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and see you next year.
See you.
Right? All right, everybody. We are ending our program, but please, we are so over time. We have to get out of the room, but please raise your banners. This is to kick off for next year. Let's have a photo, everybody. See you all next year, Beijing 30. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.